answers.
Welcome everyone to the Tuesday, May 28, 2024 budget hearing. Looking for the next hearing. There's no public comment. Oh, there's no public comment. But on the agenda for 2.01 public comments, residents of St. Louis County, Missouri are invited to attend any public comments, but we don't have any of these.
Correct.
So, if there's any questions or concerns? All right. It's not written down.
Director Asner? Director Mueller?
Here.
Director Sartorius?
Here.
Director Suda?
Here.
Director Staton?
Here.
Vice President Cuneo?
Here.
And President Petroff.
Here. All right, no public comments. Any questions or concerns from the board? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So.
Second. Thank
All in
you.
favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, now, I'd like to call to order our business meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024. We need to call, roll call again.
Yes,
And
give
then
me,
we'll do the pledge.
give me one moment here.
Okay.
Okay. Director Asner? Director Mueller?
Here.
Director Sartorius?
Here.
Director Suda? Here. Director Staton?
Here.
Vice President Cuneo?
Here.
And President Petroff.
Here, if we could all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda is public comment. I believe Amy has 3 that she will read first.
So the first public comment I have this evening is from Linda Quinley, who is with Missouri School Boards Association. I wanted to send a quick note to share how hard Dr. Macklin, Ms. Vaughn, and others in the leadership group have worked to accomplish the big task of planning and preparing a budget for the SSD Board and Governing Council. The learning curve was steep and there is more growth to come in this area. But Dr. Macklin is really engaged, studied, and learned the major components of financial projecting and planning. The amount of detailed back-end work required to develop a budget with such complex components as yours is a very large task. Managing forward while managing for current issues takes a fine balance and courage. I feel good about where you are today and where SSD is headed. As the board receives the budget, remember it is not a static document and you have more moving parts than any other district in Missouri. Expect Dr. Macklin and team to return in the fall with tweaks and adjustments as the real data falls out, such as enrollment, assessed valuation, returning staff, etc. It has been my pleasure to offer guidance and support these past months. And with budget planning, MSBA will continue to be committed to the work you do and supporting the team. The next public comment is from Pamela Less. She is a special education teacher in the Riverview Gardens School District. I am submitting this email as a way to communicate a message of thanks and gratitude to Dr. Macklin and thank you to the board for our contract for the 2024-25 school year, as well as progress on the special effects initiative and stipend for employees in North County identified districts. While our work is not complete, we appreciate your efforts and hope that we can begin to fill vacancies, decrease the workload on already stressed staff, and all work together to change the narrative within the identified areas of St. Louis County. Again, I speak for many staff members when saying a heartfelt thank you. And the third comment I have is from Lindsay Weatherby, and she is a Limburg parent and an SSD educator. Hello. I wish I could have been there in person to say thank you, but I am unable to attend tonight's meeting. First, thank you so much for indexing the salary schedule, increasing the overall pay, giving us a step, and honoring the longevity stipend. This is huge for so many people. Additionally, thank you for approving all the needed positions brought to you. These positions are going to make a huge difference in the lives of educators across the district once filled. That said, our work is not done. The key is once those positions are filled, we are in a crisis in all areas of education right now. How are we going to fill those vacancies and, more importantly, retain the educators once they are hired? This is an amazing step in the right direction, but we need to keep working together to problem solve current challenges so we have strong educators in the classroom. My children and all SSD students deserve strong, happy educators who are able to truly help them reach their full potential. Thank you again.
Mr. Edie, if you want to come up, while you do, I'll read the standard that you've heard before. Welcome to the Special School District St. Louis County Board of Education business meeting. Up to 30 minutes each board meeting will be set aside for a tier of public comment. Board of Education values your input and thanks you for your comment. Each comment is limited to 3 minutes to address any item that is a legitimate part of the business of the board. No confidential or personnel related topics are allowed. Comments are read in order they received by email. The contents of the email and the sender's name and address have been submitted to the secretary and board will become part of official public record of the meeting.
Hi, President Bottrop and Vice President Cuneo and Dr. Macklin, members of the board. I'm Tim Eby, the Executive Director of the Special Education Foundation, and I'm just here. I've talked to you a little bit in the past about our Starfish Awards that are coming up in June, and we announced our winners a couple of weeks ago, and I don't believe there's been a meeting since we announced our winners to share with you who our winners were. We have 8 educators, one from each of the sub-districts and one from the SSD schools that will be Starfish Award winners. And I just wanted to share with you who those folks were. Marcia Davidson, representing Subdistrict 7, is an SSD substitute paraprofessional at Green Pines Elementary. David Peterson is representing the SSD schools. He's a teacher at North Tech High School. Mallory Birch is a teacher at Walker Elementary in Subdistrict 1. And Dana Meineke, who I believe is in Kirkwood. Dana is a teacher at North Glendale Elementary in Subdistrict 5. Katie Dowd is a teacher from Oak Hill Senior High in Subdistrict 2 down in Melville. Carrie Bennett is a teacher at Ladue Horton Watkins High in Subdistrict 6. He's at Ladue. And Mary Reich Hernandez is a teacher at Michelle Obama ECAC in Subdistrict 4, representing Riverview Gardens. And Carrie Frazier was our not last but not least, certainly in the Parkway schools, Subdistrict 3, a teacher at Barrett's Elementary, and Ms. Frazier is a general ed teacher. She's an art teacher, and it's so much of an impact on kids who receive special ed students that she received nominations and awards. We're also announcing 3 community awards. One going to Dr. Joylyn Pruitt Adams, who is our SEF Starfish Leadership Award. Dr. Pruitt Adams is the superintendent retiring, I think, at the end of the year from Riverview Gardens School District. Our Community Starfish Award goes to Debbie Bentelli. Debbie is a past president of the Special Education Foundation and has been just instrumental at SEF. And our Spirit of SEF Starfish Award goes to Diane Burr-Angelsford. Diane was the founding executive director of the Special Ed Foundation. And we'd love to have all of you at our event. It's on Thursday, June 13th at City Park, where the awardees will be out on the pitch receiving their awards with the big screens all lit up. And it's going to be a wonderful event. I hope you enjoy this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, for the approval of agenda 3.01, I'll read this and then we can have the motion. Motion to approve the agenda as presented with a change in the cost to the agenda item 6.07, Director of Communications position modification, and 6.08, Director of Marketing position modification. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. For 4.01 FY 2025 budget presentation.
All right, good evening, President Potrov, Board of Directors, Dr. Macklin. I'm Kevin Andrew, Executive Director of Career and Technical Education, College and Career Learning. So with me this evening is Cynthia Vaughn, our Director of Finance, and Dr. Kelly Grigsby, our Executive Director of Schools and Programs. And we have the privilege of presenting the FY 25 budget this evening. Before we get going, I just want to shout out a couple of people who were instrumental in getting the document that you have in front of you this evening. First, on the revenue side, Steve Stevens in our accounting department was instrumental in getting everything together for the revenue side. And then Cynthia Vaughn, our Director of Finance, was huge on the expenditure side. So those are the two big pieces of the budget, and those people who are responsible for that are with us this evening. So we'll get going. So the budget purpose and goals, you've seen this before, this hasn't changed. You've got our goals there on the side of equity, supporting our staff, curricular support and facilities, those remain the same. Additionally, our budget focus has not changed as it talks about the needs, the wants, the enhancements, but then also looking at how do we support overall all partner districts in SSD schools, but then also our disproportionality districts, those 11 districts, then also how do we support those 8 high needs districts. Recognizing as needs change, the supports that we provide as a district also need to move and evolve. And so that's reflected in the budget that you're going to be receiving this evening. Disproportionality, this is just a reminder of who all falls into that tier 2 category. So every district that's listed there on that slide is one of our disproportionality schools. And as Ms. McRiddle would, or Ms. Moore would speak with you, in the past, it's really these are the districts that we're providing extra supports to try and make sure that we're closing the gap for students, decreasing the over-identification of students with disabilities, and really making sure that we're putting intentional supports, especially in the general education side of the support network, to make sure that students are getting what they need on a day-to-day basis, and we're seeing fewer students matriculating into special education. Then tier 3, these are our high needs districts. Again, some of these are also our disproportionality districts. So if it's a district that's also a disproportionality district, you'll see in the budget that not as much additional funding might be dedicated to them, or it might be one-time funding that you'll see in these tier 3 high needs districts. And then you've got a breakdown of our historic revenue and expenditures year over year. So you've got your FY 22 actual and your FY 23 actual in comparison to our FY 24 budget. So this evening you have the FY 24 budget adjustment that's coming. So the numbers you see there are based off of that budget adjustment. And then you have our FY 25 budget. And again, that's the new budget that we're bringing to you this evening for approval. You've got the revenue, expenditures, the actual fund balance, and that fund balance percentage down there at the bottom. So some highlights that you're going to see in the FY 25 budget. So we're going to call it a couple different budget codes that you're going to see, and you may have seen already in the report. These are ones where you'll see some significant change from previous years to this year. So 6112 is our classroom certified full-time staff. You're going to see a 6.6% increase in the cost there. That's twofold. So one, that's an increase in salaries, and then two, that also factors in the additional staff. So the additional teaching positions that are being added also fall into that category. 6113, that's our support staff, support certified full-time, and that's again a 7% increase, and that also includes both raises as well as additional positions. On the non-certified classroom support, so those are our paraprofessionals for the most part, you'll see that's a 7.8% increase. That includes the 99 additional paraprofessional positions that are being added as a part of this budget that we'll talk about at the end. Transportation aides. You will see an increase there in transportation aides. That's a part of the collective bargaining agreement with them. It's also a byproduct of them being closer to fully staffed, where we had coming out of COVID a shortage of aides, and now we're getting back up to a full staff with that employee group. Then you got clerical temp. It looks like on paper, like that's a really big increase, but when you look at the dollar amount, it's not so much. It's just a shift in philosophy, whereas we have folks going out, especially taking district approved leaves like the family leave, that we're using temps to backfill clerical positions. So it's just a change in philosophy is what you're seeing there in that increase. Student employment, so this is a fun one. At our technical high schools, this is a new direction we're going in our early childhood program. We're starting to have in our after school piece, we're having students work as student workers to support in our daycare centers after school. So students are already there, so it takes that transportation piece out of the equation because they don't have to go anywhere. They're already in the building. So before we would stagger the shifts of the teacher's assistants that were in the room. And so instead of having them have to have a staggered shift, instead we're able to backfill the afternoon with students. We still have an adult there as well. But by being able to have those students, one, it's getting them live experience, and then two, it's fulfilling a staffing need for the district. So we see that as a win-win. So you'll see that's a big jump in student employment, but that's actually a trend that we kind of want to see across the board, is that there's more places and spaces where we can create those authentic opportunities for kids in our schools. We want to do that. And the last two pieces that you'll see on there are tied to benefits. So that's non-teacher retirement and then medical and life insurance. Our life insurance increase is pretty standard with what you're going to see, and medical insurance increase is pretty standard with other districts. The non-teacher retirement, as wages increase, retirement contributions are going to increase as well. So now we're talking a little bit about purchase services and supplies. So 6311, that one is our Kelly services. We've talked about that before. So that is a pretty big jump from, if you look 2 fiscal years ago, that we're budgeting about $17 million there. That's a carryover from where we were the previous year. We've got some pieces in place to try and get that dollar amount under control. And then 6316, that's data processing services. Again, that's tied to our transition of a couple of our technology systems. So there's a lot of data processing that's happening right now as we're moving over to a new ERP system. Rentals and computers, you're going to see that there wasn't money there before. That's a shift. So in 6338, we're moving from purchasing devices to renting devices, especially devices that are going to be classroom level devices. So that way, every 4 years, we're guaranteed there's going to be a refresh of the device. The other piece is after a device has been in a classroom for 4 years, its fair market value is really low. So the benefit of us is continuing to hold on to that device. It's better to move on and bring a new device in. So it's a way to control some costs for the district and make sure that students always have the most recent technology at their fingertips. So we're closely with Doug Austin and his team to make that process shift. So that's why you're going to see money budgeted there, but there wasn't money in previous fiscal years. It's going to result in about a savings of $1.2 million for the district overall. 6341, contracted transportation. So 2 pieces of this puzzle. So one, if you recall, 2 months ago, we had approval of the 1-year contract extension for Student Transportation of America. That's our North Bus Garage. So that covers the northern part of our district. So STA, they got a salary increase. What we weighed was whether we go out to bid or we do a 1-year increase. And for the districts who went out to bid, they saw a 15% increase. And what their transportation cost was. So instead, we negotiated a 7% increase. And so while it is a jump, we did see a savings. The other piece of that puzzle in contracted transportation is the supplemental transportation we use. Cabs, Zip Care, EMT, all of those one-offs, we're seeing really a higher rate or higher cost for those. And it's across the board. They're all seeing it because everyone's competing for the same labor pool. It's driving up the hourly wage. And so for us to be able to provide those, especially for students who need really supplemental routing, it's the most effective means, but there is a cost to that. It's cheaper than a school bus still, but it's not as affordable as it was pre-COVID. And so that's where we've seen the biggest increase in contracted transportation besides STA. Dues and memberships, we're seeing that one level off a little bit as we're moving into this year, but just remember, as we talked about, some of the things that are now being charged to dues and memberships are some of the things that are included in those joint resolutions we're paying for teachers. Some of those different certifications are being charged to dues and memberships, so 6371. And then supplies, so supplies technology related, we've talked about 6412. We are seeing a little bit of an uptick there because the devices we purchased during COVID now are due for refresh. So we're seeing more devices due for refresh than what we see in a normal traditional cycle, so that's where an uptick there. General supplies, that one's really just a cost of inflation. We're seeing about a 6% increase on just the things that we're purchasing or the shipping costs associated with the things that we're purchasing. And then subscriptions and publications, also some of those memberships that we're purchasing for teachers as part of joint resolution, some of that stuff is falling under subscriptions and publications. And so it depends on if it's a renewable subscription or if it's a one-time membership. It kind of depends on which bucket it falls in, if it's 6371 or 6451. So that's the split there. Last piece is capital outlay. And you're going to notice that we've got some numbers that are smaller than what you've seen in years past. We've gotten done with a lot of really substantial construction projects. Our district was pretty well under perpetual construction for a while, where we were moving from school to school to school. We're now in the maintenance stage, which is exciting for the budget. And so now we're moving on to what you'll see in 6521 are what are those things that we have to do to keep the district functioning. So we're talking about roof projects, we're talking about electrical infrastructure, we're talking about floor work, those types of things. So not as exciting projects necessarily as a redoing of a front entrance, but those things that we have to do to keep school running. 6531 improvements other than buildings, same thing. It's not super exciting. It is asphalt, it is striping, it is parking lots, and there's some playground pieces in there as well. So 6531 and 6521, we've really shifted to what are those essential pieces for the district operations as opposed to those larger scale construction projects that we've done in years past. 6552, you're going to see an uptick for buses, and that's because the buses that we're going to buy in FY25 are the buses that you all approved to buy in FY23 that we couldn't get to show up. So we're finally at the point where we can get type C buses. So the big buses, we've been able to get type A for a year. Now we're actually going to get some type C buses, and we haven't had any in a while. And so the money that was going to be spent all the way back in FY23 kept rolling forward. So now we're actually able to get those buses on board. And then 6613, you're just going to see a drop off there in principal lease purchase agreements. That's tied to our copiers, where we have a number of copiers that we were leasing until we purchased them, and now we're starting to own those devices, so they're coming out of the budget. So you'll see a drop off there. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Cynthia Vaughn to talk a little bit about revenue and expenditures.
Good evening. The current slide showing our revenue numbers for the FY25 requested budget compared to the FY24 revised budget, which you'll see tonight, and also our actual FY23 revenue numbers. We had a question about the percentage changes. It actually goes from right to left on the screen. So on the far right column, the percentage change is the change between the budget, the requested FY25 budget and FY24. And then the middle change column is FY24 budget compared to the actual FY23 numbers. And then that far left change column is the actual FY23 compared to the previous year's actuals that you don't see on here. So the FY25 budget numbers are $557,926,000 compared to 562,521 for this year. Next slide is the exact same for the expenditures side, broken down by category. We have the certified salaries, non-certified benefits, purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay. It's also showing your FY25 requested budget compared to the historical data. The change in budget for FY25 for this year is $24,869,000.
Good evening. As you know, a significant part of our budget is staffing, so I'll bring you some updates regarding staffing. Some of this information you heard at the work study with them. SSD schools, our 5 SSD schools, the enrollment has decreased about 125 students over the last 5 years. However, our staffing levels for teacher level staff have remained steady. So what you've seen is a decrease in student to teacher ratio from 3.66 to 2.95. We've seen the same type of decrease in students receiving services in the partner school districts as well, while we have maintained a similar staffing pattern or added additional staff. So with regards to a reduction over time, over the next 5 years to right the ship, which we've talked about in the past, we'll be looking at all operational instructional positions throughout the district as they will be reviewed as they're vacated. In our district, we see about a 650 to 700 position turnover from year to year, which is an ideal time for us to look at reallocations and adjustments based on staff vacancies. Our priority continues to be to maintain high student levels of service by also maintaining financial responsibilities along the way. We're going to examine programming, staffing ratios, and also make sure that we are meeting IEP requirements. Last summer, a joint effort was made to look at caseload and workload at the Caseload and Workload Summit in partnership with the SDNEA. Out of that came a group that has been working on a system to be able to quantify caseloads in an attempt to be able to look at ratios across the district and make staffing decisions based on that. Next year, this upcoming school year, the 24-25 school year, that will be piloted in Riverview, Rockwood, and Maplewood. Piloting gives us an opportunity to be able to make adjustments, and it also gives us an opportunity to set thresholds. So that's what we will be doing this year, and then we'll be making adjustments as we move into the following. So for the 25-26 school year. As you know, and that was mentioned in public comments, all of the positions that were requested were granted. To give a little bit of information on that, we did not feel like we had a really consistent way, and it was pretty late in the school year to be talking about not adding positions when they're based on student needs. So we're going to clean that up, come up with some processes as we talked about, and moving forward, we're going to look at reallocation rather than that. Do you have any questions?
I do, and I think you just answered it, but clarify, I appreciate it. You mentioned the page slide the police services.
Yes.
Cost overrun recent times. Yeah, you mentioned strategies to minimize or control that. What you were referring to right there, was that the answer?
Yeah, so a couple pieces with that. So one thing that we're taking a good hard look is release time. And so we're seeing, because release time falls into a variety of different categories. And so some of it is professional development related, some of it's tied to things where you really need the release time, like for an IEP meeting and those types of things. So when we're looking at release time, we see it in a couple different categories. We also see there's some places and spaces where individual staff are taking a very high amount of release time in comparison to other staff. And so we recognize that there's a need for release time, but at the same time, we need to be equitable about that distribution, especially looking at those hotspots where people might be using it more than what we see in other places and spaces. We need to do some root cause analysis there to figure out what really is the catalyst there. And if it's a person who's consistently going to training, is all of this training really relevant and necessary for the place and space that they're working in the district? Or is the way that we could stagger that, or can things be done on days when it would not impact student attendance? So you wouldn't necessarily need a sub to cover a classroom. So those pieces are some of the pieces that we're looking at with the sub piece. The more that we fill vacancies, the fewer subs that we would need as well. So we are cognizant of that we have subs filling vacancies. We also just see some spots where when in doubt, we're putting in for a sub. And if the teacher shows up, then we're not always sending that sub home, or it's not happening fast enough, and then we're getting billed by Kelly Services, even though that sub didn't end up doing anything because they stepped into the door. We're getting a bill. And so those are pieces that we're really trying to dig in there to make sure that if the sub is coming to a school, it's because we truly need the sub at that school, and not just because we might need a sub at that school. So we're taking a look at a couple different angles. It starts with educating our administrators about really how release time should be operating and making sure that they're paying attention to it and really get a little more institutional control, and making sure those opportunities are spread evenly across the district as opposed to just a couple of pockets.
I think also, to your point, Director Muller, if you look, of course, the budget for FY25 is about 17 million for Kelly subs. And a couple of years ago, it was set at around 12 million, and then that was cut to 4. And so knowing, anticipating, seeing where the projection was going, there's no way it was going to be at 12 million for those pieces. I think the ultimate goal, which Kevin Andrew mentioned, is to be able to eliminate vacancies. Because eliminating vacancies will allow us to take that Kelly subs budget and to be able to do some things to be able to help to recruit and retain more staff. We're averaging just a large amount on a daily basis. And so some institutional control also is a way of being able to.
Yeah, because back when we had subs in-house, the difference was before we switched to Kelly Services, the district had subs in-house, but we also oftentimes were unable to fulfill the requests. So you'd have a teacher put in for a sub and we just wouldn't have a sub show up, where Kelly has a 96% fill rate. So if we put in a request for a sub is gonna show up at that school, where before it was a little bit more of a roll of the dice of, you can put in a request for a sub and somebody might show up, they might not show up. And so we weren't really getting what that true cost was of what if a sub actually showed up every time you put in a request. And now that's what we're seeing in budget.
You know, we keep increasing staff because we're saying our students are going down. And we say that because our students have greater needs. And I've said that, you know, that's always been our justification. I've got a question on that. How can we measure, or how can we quantify that the students that we're serving have greater needs? And I just don't want something that says that we have larger minutes in the IEP, because that, you know, that's a circular
Yeah, it's a number we have
statement.
control over.
That doesn't tell me anything. Is there a way we can measure that? Just at some point, we're gonna have to justify that. And I just wonder how we're gonna measure that.
Is that part of your system? Yes, so as part of the system that we're looking at
Okay.
implementing with regards to piloting next year, there are pieces built into that. So yes, you can look at IEP minutes, you can look at behavior plans, you can look at different types of supports. There's a lot of different things we can look at. We also do need to combat the perception that our students are harder or more difficult. We do have a pocket of students that are definitely have challenging needs, and it's our obligation to meet those. But we also have a lot of students who are receiving supports that are adequate or even great, and we continue to add staff when we need to look at our programming, we need to look at our training, we need to look at tolerance and supports within the target districts. There's a whole litany of things that we can be looking at. The goal is that that system that's being developed and being piloted will be sensitive to that, but that's also why we're piloting it, so we can make adjustments as we move into the following school.
Thank you, because my problem with that, you know, when the standard line was, we have the students who serve have greater needs. That's nice to say. But that also attaches an additional stigma to our students. That, you know, and I see Molly shaking her head there. So I was trying to figure out, is there another way that could be phrased? And I love the fact that you've got a pilot on this, because what we were saying made our individuals, made our students even more stigmatized. So I'm really happy that we've got a, are we going to hear more about that at some point? Thank you.
Agree about that. Also, it's hard to say that students' needs are more severe when we have a lot of vacancies, right? Because the programming isn't being implemented with fidelity because inconsistency with staffing, then student needs aren't really being met. And so then it's hard to say, like.
And that problem, quite frankly, is not gonna get any easier.
Yeah, but my question was actually, how are the pilot districts selected?
I do not have that information, but I can get it for you. Won't put it.
I do, yes, thank you. Thanks. I'm looking at slide 6, just as sort of a springboard, where we're looking at our, you know, our expenditures and our revenues over time. And clearly this level of spending is not going to be sustainable. We've got some things in place, and I'm wondering about some things. I'm wondering, I've been asking, and I think I'll continue to ask, and I know we're working toward it, for a complete comprehensive staffing plan. Who do we have in place? And then were there things that were the needs greater because of COVID, and are any of those tapering off? So what are our needs in terms of staffing? And I know you're talking about that. Another question that comes to mind, and I didn't get a chance to ask in advance, it just occurred to me, is this. You've talked about a handful of expenditures that are just for FY25. You've talked about school buses, you've talked about computer equipment. Are there any other things that come to mind that would be unique to 25 that may not carry over into 26? I know we're not there yet. I know that's a really forward-looking question.
Yeah, so of the pieces that we have in the budget presented this evening, school buses is probably our biggest dollar amount item that I would put in the outlier category, that this year is different than other years. Correct, we could order them, we just wouldn't actually receive them. They would take the order, it's actually fulfilling the order. That was the problem, and so that's one of them that's really our biggest carryover expense. Part of the reason we wanted to switch to rented computer devices is because as we cycle out those purchased devices and move entirely to rented, then we're gonna know year over year exactly what our technology expense is going to be. It's gonna become less volatile. So that's why we want to make some of those moves. And so we're looking at the budget in those places where we can move things to be that kind of flat. Year over year, we know what the predictable expense is gonna be. That's the benefit of the rental agreement, is it might cost a little bit more for the device, but we know as a district for budgeting purposes, exactly what we're gonna spend year over year. We're trying to make the budget more predictable. There's a couple things that you'll also see, like in the technical school, we have a few things that are some capital purchases, that'll be one-time purchases. But what ends up happening there is well, we solve the problem in this program and then it moves over to another program. So it'll be relatively flat year over year. And so that's why we're looking at those things like the Kelly Services subs as being a big one of, that's one that if we can get back to just what we were spending in FY 22, that's a pretty substantial savings for the district. So how do we get ourselves back just to 2 fiscal years ago where we weren't as reliant on subs to fill needs throughout the district?
Great, thank you. And that, I guess that raises the question too. So the fund balance was increasing year over year for quite a long time. And I guess part of that was then due to the fact that buses were budgeted and not purchased. So some of the underspending, was that due to that?
So we had a variety of factors at play. So we were having trouble with procuring items, and that was buses was a good example, but it wasn't just buses. There was a period of time when we couldn't get technology. We could order it again, but we couldn't receive it. We also had some delays on things on the instructional side too, with materials. We had a lot of things get stuck in sea containers in San Francisco that just couldn't make their way to the Midwest. And so there were pieces where we just couldn't spend. And then we also had the influx of additional federal revenue through ESSER. So we weren't able to spend the money. We were trying to, but we weren't able to spend it at the same time we were getting additional resources at the same time that at the state level, because of the COVID era provisions around the formula and those pieces, it kept a lot of our revenue from the state flat. And then the state also had additional revenue, so they fully funded things like transportation, which they had never, ever done. And so there were all of those things that kind of happened all at the same time, but now we're returning back a little bit to normal, where the state's budget is tightening up, and the idea of fully funded transportation, we're anticipating it for FY 25. For FY 26, we're a little more skeptical. And then this is kind of the end of the COVID era provisions of funding. And so we're really getting back to what the real budget looks like for the district over the next couple of fiscal years.
Thanks. I'll say for me, it's a little bit challenging to pass a budget with this much deficit spending. I understand how we got where we are, and I understand that we're working on righting the ship. Just looking forward to how we're going to continue to be as responsible as we can while meeting all of the needs that we have in front of us. Thank you.
In the comments, you were saying that the bus was gonna cost us more, but isn't that rollover money that we've all budgeted that's gonna be rolled over?
So it is, however, the cost of those buses is going up as well.
Right.
That the competition for them, as well as in transportation, we have the challenge of a lot of manufacturers are focusing on electric buses, and those are gonna cost $400,000 a bus. And for our purposes, it doesn't really work because our buses never stop. You need to be able to stop and charge during the middle of the day, and the way that we run routes, we are in constant motion. There is no downtime to recharge a bus. And so we're looking at those traditional diesel buses, and as a result of that, the cost of chassis, the cost of everything that's related to it, the microprocessors, all of it is made. What would cost to buy a bus in 2024 is more expensive than what it would have cost in 2021 or 29, especially 29.
So we are rolling some of that money over.
We are.
And then in the technology area, didn't you make a comment that that's gonna actually save us money by doing a lease program and so forth?
Yeah, so the leasing is gonna definitely save us money this year and next year, and then as we move forward, it's gonna allow for predictability. So that way we know year over year, how much are we gonna spend on technology as opposed to waiting to find out what it's gonna cost for this large, because essentially 25% of our devices every year is coming up for renewal. And so we're gonna be less dependent on what the market volatility is.
I have one question on, what was that, page 10, slide 10. Where the state For the 25-24% change, it was negative 6.30%. Why so much compared to,
The other revenue streams?
yeah.
Yeah, so at the state funding, the biggest piece of that is the foundation formula. And so we were able to operate it under the COVID era provision where they let us take what our enrollment was in the 1920 school year and continue to roll that forward. For anyone who's familiar with schools, our numbers have been shrinking since then. And then at the same time, it hit SSD a little bit doubly hard because we had full-time students at North Tech. If you remember, over that period, we phased out the full-day program. So that took out about 300 full-time students from our foundation formula equation. So not only did we see a shrink in student population as a result of weighted ADA, both within our SSD schools and the students we serve in partner district, but then we also had 300 full-time students that were no longer part of the equation. And in that formula, you get additional funding for students who are free reduced lunch. And at that time, North Tech was a 100% free reduced lunch school. So there was a multiplier there. So those students counted for more than one student. So it was really like we lost 500 students from that census point to where we're at now in the 23-24 school year.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm concerned about is what Joanne mentioned about our fund balance. And I know the state requires us to have a fund balance year to year. So I'm a little concerned about how for the last 3 years, we've been reducing our fund balance by almost $20 million. And we're down to 37. So if we go, we're down to 17 million when we were at 72 million just 4 years ago. So that's not sustainable. So these cutting actions we're doing is actually necessary just to keep us solid to meet the state standard.
Yeah, I think if you look at, and again, no one wants to be in a place where we're deficit spending. We truly understand that that's not sustainable long term. I think if you go back to just SSD's history in 2012, when the tax levy increased there, coupled with the number of things, right? And that's really where the fund balance just started to grow just exponentially. But if you look at really, I mean, next year, we slated to usually spend about 7 cents on capital. We're already about 3.5%, 3.5 cents, I'm sorry, for next year for those pieces. And then really knowing that where we are now, it's not going to be an overnight instant gain as it relates to being able to grow the reserves or sustain the reserves. But if you look at really sustaining over the next 5 years and being able to take about 122 million and put that back in the fund balance allows us to be able to sustain just to be able to keep where we are in that 37%, 35% range from there. I think which is the biggest attribute is that there are projection increases that happen all the time across the county, really across every school district in the country. Planning for those projections is what's key. And so we have to clearly do some things different in planning for those pieces the next 5 years.
Any other questions?
I have one more question at this point. You mentioned free and reduced lunch. There's and I don't know how much this board or people here know about community eligibility. Have we looked at whether or not we
Yeah, so
qualify
some
for
of our schools
community
are CEP
eligibility?
schools. So Northview, Ackerman are both CEP schools. Litzinger is a CEP school and New Owner is now a CEP school. So as an extension, Bridges is also a CEP. North Tech and South Tech no longer meet the eligibility criteria for CEP, and at this point, Southview does not meet the eligibility criteria to meet that community eligibility provision.
And that enhances our state reimbursement.
It does, because then every one of those students will count as a free reduced lunch student in that FTE count. So there is that multiplier associated with that.
Thank you. And I said that without any background. Does anyone need to know what community eligibility is? It's familiar to everybody. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, 5.01 is the approval of consensual items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. For our action item 7.01, reorganization chart approval. Do I have a motion?
So, second.
And are there any questions about this before we vote on it? No?
I think, just make a comment that it seems like we're aligned on our programs and our needs and streamlining. And, I think this is going to be a great way to save some money also.
Mhm.
You know, when we streamline and align things that need to be aligned in central office.
All right, so to vote, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 7.02, proposed school special district National Education Association, the SDNEA, 2024-25 salary schedules and revised articles. Do I have a motion?
Second.
You can choose. Any questions or concerns on this before we vote?
One quick question, just because I need to make sure I know exactly what it means, okay? Not on the numbers. Go ahead. But on some of the certifications, I was unsure what they were, what you had to do to get them. What did you have to do to get the nursing certification that had an equivalent to a PhD or an EDD? I just didn't know, what is that?
So the district is valuing the national cert as an indicator of
Okay,
greater participation in the district. Our nurses also generate Medicaid revenue to the district. And so that licensure provision in the negotiated in the previous year was to address those districts where it also is associated with enhanced revenue through Medicaid.
okay, so it's more of a revenue enhancer more than it is an educational attainment.
It also looking at equivalency. So nursing, we're able to gather revenue by just licensed personnel. But when we were looking at those and the amount of effort that they have to do to obtain the national certification and maintain it involves quite a lot of effort. And so we wanted to recognize that.
But it's not the equivalent of a doctorate in nursing or a master's in nursing.
It's in the order of, I will need to consult.
I just didn't, and I apologize, I just didn't know what the.
No, it involves many tens of hours of professional learning
Okay,
and taking assessments.
no, I'm not arguing that
Yeah.
we should do it or don't do it, I just didn't know what it meant. Same thing with the teacher certification. Can you explain that to me? And again, I'm not arguing that we should or shouldn't do it. I just didn't know, I would like to know what it is before I vote yes.
Yeah, I think that we have over the years recognized that teachers and professionals that go beyond the minimum requirement and become additionally prepared to the national certificate level displays their additional commitment and speaks to their resiliency and capacity as an educator to be able to provide greater services to our students. The teacher certification at national level has been part of our joint resolution
Okay.
contract for several decades, I believe. What was recently added were some of the additional licensed professionals who also with national certificate would be able to get that second.
Would it be possible, and again, and if I'm the only one who would like to know, then don't do it. Could you give me this, just shoot the standards in the Friday packet, just so I know what they are?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm voting yes
Mhm.
on what it said, I just need to have some idea what that meant.
Sure.
Any other questions about the SDNA's salary schedules and the revised articles?
I'd just like to make a comment. I know that this was a joint effort between administration and SDNEA, and I think that a lot of hard work was put into this, and I'm glad that everyone is on the same page.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. It really was a substantial amount of work for the team that SDNEA brought forward, as well as our team led by Dan Kelly, really engaged in the process as it's intended to be. There was a lot of honest conversation. It was a very great outcome.
Good. I'd like to continue in that vein. I'm very pleased. Thank you.
All right, so all in favor for 7.02, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. 7.03, FY 25 budget, do I have a motion?
So
Do I have a second?
Okay.
Any questions concerning this? I think we all asked them moments ago. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion carries. 7.04 FY 24 budget adjustment. Would someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Would someone like to make a second?
Second.
Any questions or concerns about this? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 7.05 24-25 administrative starting salary structure. Any questions or concerns about this?
Need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a Second. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 7.06 administrative 24-25 salary increase. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 7.07 miscellaneous business professionals 2024-25 salary increase. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? And are there any questions? No? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And lastly, 7.08, the central bus garage contract release. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? Perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Do I have a motion for 8.01, the closed meeting of Board of Education, Tuesday, May 28th, today, following this meeting, and Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 at 7 p.m. And this will be a roll call.
Director Mueller,
Yes.
Director Sartorius,
Yes.
Director Suda,
Yes.
Director Staton,
Yeah.
Vice President Cuneo,
Yes.
and President Petrov.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to collectively just make a couple of comments. I think, I'll start with first echoing Director Sewell's comments. At any time that you enter into the collective bargaining process, there will be some dissonance in that process, just because if that's what bargaining is. And so I do want to thank both team, SSD team, some of the representatives are here tonight from that team, and then also NEA team for those pieces to be able to move forward. That is work, that is hard work, that does not go unseen and unnoticed. So I think that's the first piece, and I'll put a period at the end of that. And then the next piece is really just as we continue to move forward with our budget, we want to ensure there are two things that we promise parents when they send their sons and daughters, families to school. Number one is that they're going to be safe, that they will return, come to school and be able to return to school the same way. And I think in this day and age, that is something that's not always promised. And so we collectively, and I say we, because I'm speaking from the Board of Education myself, but I'm also speaking from my leadership team who is in this room also. We do not take that light at all. That is very, very serious to us. I think the next thing is that we also promise here the quality of service delivery. And we understand truly there's some things that we got to get better at. And we're going to work to do those, to get those pieces better. It is also about being able to really delve into spaces and places that need some assistance and being able to meet those needs. We were clearly sure as we worked, individuals who are here and who are not here to develop the FY 25 budget, actually 24 and 25 budget of what this pieces will take. And we do have a road ahead of us, but I'm confident that we can meet the next steps with the individuals who are here in this room. So I just want to say thank you.
Do I have a motion for 8.02 approval of minutes?
Motion by Suda,
Do I have a second?
Second.
All through, all. All there, oh my God.
All in favor?
All in favor, thank
Aye.
you.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion carries. Executive meeting action items, I'm not gonna read about the last meeting. The following items were approved during the executive meeting on April 23rd, 2024. Employment resignation, retirement, salary adjustments, extra duty pay, 2 terminations, 2 non-renewals, reemployment of part-time hourly staff, and 4 agreements. Following items were approved during the executive meeting on May 14th, 2024. Employment resignations, retirement, salary adjustments, extra duty pay, and 1 agreement. 8.04 board communications. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share?
A little bit, yes. I had the privilege of attending the graduation at New Owner and the 8th grade promotion at Litzinger, and they were very joyful occasions. It was just nice to see the culmination of more than 1 year's hard work, really, in all of those cases, most cases. And I know the last day of school was this week, and I wish last week, I wish everyone a safe and happy summer break. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to commend Dr. Macklin for recently being awarded the Educator of Excellence by the NAACP, and congratulations.
Would it be possible at this point to get a picture of Dr. Macklin and the board? I'd like that one put in the paper or in the stuff that we had, that he won the award, won the award. I think that would, first of all, I think it'd be good for Dr. Macklin, but I think it would be excellent for the excellent for SSD.
Want to get a picture of that?
Yeah.
They actually come to our attention, so.
And the official award date is June 22nd. Act like you like each other.
There we go.
Thank you, Kevin. One more time.
Thank you. So, my team, just did not know about, the recognition of the award, because of, I'm going to share it with them, but I wanted to get through just some of the things that we were working with. And I think anytime that you can receive an award, it's a testament to the work that takes place. But I will say that over the last 6 months, I have learned the hard way that it's not about one individual. It's truly collective, about people who have humanism, people who have a work ethic, and people who are willing to do more. And so, indubitably, I may receive the award, but I have a group of individuals who I work with. A lot of times when they should be thinking about their families, they're not. A lot of times when they should be at home, they're not. A lot of times when they should not be taking my call, they are. And so I truly appreciate them here tonight. I think that's the first thing. The next thing is, when you look at the history of the NAACP, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King Jr. Individuals who have really paved this country's pathway and laid bricks and foundation for individuals who would not have a chance. I am 100% honored and grateful to be honored by the NAACP. And more importantly, here at the Special School District. So thank you.
That's much deserved. All right, calendar of events, you can read online. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Which one got it? Did you get it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, we'll see you next time.
All right.